Hi everyone, this is a brief introduction to the Shapeshifter 2 plugin for Photoshop. If you go to the Adobe Exchange and find Shapeshifter, you should be able to download it just by clicking on what will say free, the little blue button right here. When you click on that, it'll say acquired. I believe you have to have Adobe Creative Cloud installed in order to install plugins. And you can manage your plugins by going to the stock and marketplace and then plugins and clicking on manage plugins. Shapeshifter 2 should appear here, and you can just go ahead and click install. It's just saying it's been developed by a third party, that's me, and you install it and open Photoshop. And here we have it installed. This is my Photoshop document. If you go to the plugins panel here, you'll see an option for Shapeshifter, and you should be able to just click on it and it'll show right here. Like any other panel, you can just dock this panel, so I'm going to go ahead and dock it. And let's see what this can do with the little Bernie meme. Basically what Shapeshifter does is when I click generate, it's going to take whatever layer I have selected, and I've got the Bernie image selected here, he's cut out, and it's going to make duplicates, and then it's going to apply whatever settings are selected here. And now right now I've got transform, shift, and color shift selected, and let's just go ahead and increase the number of repetitions to 30 and hit generate, and we'll just use the default settings, whatever came with the plugin right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and click generate, and you can see it does a nice little repeat and transform. So let's break down what's happening here. If we open the transform shift options, you see the blue check mark is selected, or the blue little switch is selected. And what it's doing is it's moving the layer 40 pixels to the right, and it's moving it vertically 20 pixels up, and it's rotating the layer by 10 degrees and scaling it down by 5 degrees each time. And so, and it's doing this iteratively, meaning, so if I undo what we just did, and here's a little undo for the entire generation, so I'm going to undo that whole thing. And let's just set this to 1 to clarify. So it duplicated my Bernie layer, it moved it up and over, it rotated it slightly, and it scaled it down slightly. And you can also see it shifted the color. Here I have invert selected, but none of these hue, saturation, or brightness is selected. So it's just inverting each time it does it. Now if I hit generate again, you'll see it inverts it again, it shifts it again. And so it's an iterative process in that sense. And let's go ahead and try some of these other settings. I'm going to undo these. And instead of inverting, why don't we just make it get brighter each time, and maybe we'll shift the hue a little bit each time, and we'll increase the saturation as well. And let's see how that one looks. Maybe I don't want that vertical movement up, which is negative on the y-axis there. That's all the negative number means. And we'll just have it move over and it rotate. Set this to 15. And there you go. Each time it's getting slightly lighter, and it's shifting hue and saturation. You can see it's getting a little saturated, but the lightness is overdoing it. I can always click again if I want more duplicates. So let's keep going with our little Bernie, psychedelic Bernie image. And that's great. All right. So let me show you a couple of other settings related to a couple of other basic settings related to transform. Again, I'm going to undo these. This, by the way, is a cancel button. If you're generating and something goes wrong and you just don't want it to generate any more copies, you just hit that little stop sign there. All right, this time I'm going to click Recursion. I'm going to click Hide Previous, and maybe we'll align it to center. And I'll increase this all the way to 30. Now what you're seeing this time is it's again creating layers, but notice only that top layer is showing. Because what it's doing is it's actually duplicating the layer, doing those transforms, and then flattening it to the previous layer. And that's called recursion, as it applies the same transform, but then melds it into that previous move. And recursion's very powerful to make these kind of generative forms. And you can keep going. So like we could start, shifting this. I'm going to keep it aligned to center, and get an experiment with different patterns. You can even, I believe, change the settings as it's generating. And so this plugin is great for exploring these kind of generative forms. Now, this part is probably one of the more powerful features of this plugin. It's not, it's actually a feature inherent to Photoshop, which is I can now change all of these layers and create a timeline from these layers. So let's just go ahead and do that. You can do that here. It's also somewhere in the file menu, which I'm forgetting exactly where right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and create timeline. And to view the timeline, I'm going to go to Window and Timeline. And you can see a little animation timeline. And let's just hit play. And there you see this kind of recursion animation happening. And now I can make all kinds of edits to it, right? Like, so for instance, in this case, frame 1 is blank. I might delete that first frame, and I might delete the second frame because I don't want him over there. And we can just play it and see how we look. When you've got it how you like it, you can render this as a video and post it to your favorite social media site. So let's go ahead and go to File and Export and Render to Video. And it's just taking that animation timeline and rendering it. And I can save it out to my document. You can save it as a video, as an image sequence, whatever you're looking to do. So let me introduce you to some of the other settings here, and I'm going to, again, undo my generations. So this is a little different than just hitting undo because it's undoing all of the steps that it took to generate that animation that we just made. So let's do a different one. I'm going to get rid of recursion. I'll get rid of all of these. And maybe I'm going to flatten my image because I'm just going to write over this entire image with these other settings. I'm not going to do transform and color shifts this time. This time we're going to play with reaction diffusion, which is a really fascinating algorithm for doing a kind of almost like a mold simulation. And let's go ahead and click generate and see what happens. So you can see it's this kind of growth happening, and you can even modify this as it runs and have your mold kind of shift how it's growing. I've got it set to black and white. That's why it's switching to black and white. If you do, it doesn't do color very well. We can see that for a minute. I'll keep the yellow here. So it just keeps that kind of outline just from the nature of the algorithm. So I tend to just use black and white when I'm generating animation frames using reaction diffusion. And let's just kind of close up this thing here. All right, that's good enough. I'm going to go ahead and create a timeline, and let's watch that flow. Timeline created. Pretty neat. I had reaction diffusion by its very nature does that inversion. So you can always get rid of that by actually having it invert again. So let's try that again. It does a very different type of growth algorithm when you're using the inversion as well. And yeah, let's generate this, create this timeline. There we go. Slightly less flickery. Okay, let's look at a couple of other things. The wave machine is similar to reaction diffusion in that it's best applied to a solid layer instead of a cutout layer. You can, of course, do it on cutout layers, but just run it and see what it gives us. So this is, oops, still got invert selected. So this is a kind of wave generator. It's just applying the wave filter and an offset filter again and again. And let's do another version of that here. I actually don't want to color shift it, and let's just do that. There, that's a little more clarity about what's happening. And again, I can just go ahead and paint as this goes. Beautiful color choices, say. So it makes a nice kind of swirl, and let's see what that timeline would look like playing. It's very cool. I will undo those, and let's do another type of thing. I'm going to cut Bernie out again. Pink background this time. All right, so I'll select Bernie, and let's do the warp shift, which is the last one on our list here, and I will do inversion again, and maybe I'll have it get brighter each shift as well, and let's just hit generate, and you can see the image gets warped. So again, it's just applying the warp filter repeatedly with the inversion. This also works really nicely. I'm going to stop that. This also works really nicely with the recursion, and I'm going to hide the previous layer as well. I'll keep it aligned, and maybe I'll scale it down a bit because it was getting a bit large as it was warping. Do that. So again, you can see that the previous layers are hidden here. All right, pretty cool. So that's about it. Let's create that timeline, see what it looks like. Awesome. And that's the whole thing. Those are all the tools. And now, of course, you can combine all of them. There's no reason not to. I have no idea what this will give us, but let's see. Oh yeah. So now it's giving the transform shift, color shift, warp shift, wave machine, and reaction diffusion all at once. And you can see it's starting to get pretty slow because I believe it's going all the way. I believe it's creating a giant layer outside of the bounds. Let's stop it and see how big it's getting. Yeah, it started to make a giant image because the warp was kind of scaling it up a bit. And you can always play around with the settings to keep it a smaller size or anything. All right, good luck with creating these kinds of animations. Oh, one last thing. There are some presets that are pretty fun to use, and this just automatically selects some different combinations. So if we do this one, I kind of like the mirror build, and let's just generate. And it's just for doing different types of recursive or non-recursive iterative distortions and animations. There we go. And let's try another one. Let's try the evolving creature one. Yeah, and this one's some combination that uses the color reaction diffusion. Again, we can paint on it as it goes. Great. All right. Have fun, everyone. Bye.